Is everyone feeling alive? Excellent. I also feel alive. One of the perspectives that astrobiology brings to asking questions about the nature of life is what is often called the overview effect that astronauts feel when they're out in space, seeing ourselves from the outside. And actually, this is a critically hard thing to do, and this is one of the reasons that I think is very difficult, the existential moment we're having right now, with how we're interfacing with our technologies. We think our technology is replacing us, even in the fact that we look at our living world and it looks alive because of our technology. But technology is not replacing life, it is life. And this forces us to ask a more fundamental question, which is, what is life to begin with? And what does it mean to be alive? These are not rhetorical questions. They are deeply important questions that matter right now in this current moment that we're living through. I don't know about all of you, but I'm sure that there were a million moments, probably many of you had them in this room, where you were interacting with something and it made you feel an epistemic trauma. Something is acting like it's life, like it's alive, and you don't know what this thing is. So I could pick any moment out of the millions of conversations or interactions we've had in the last few years. And I think individually we've all felt it. Collectively, we're experiencing it. What does it mean when something says it's alive? And what does it mean to be an I? In astrobiology, we have this concept called the Great Filter. Some of you may have heard of it. I'm obsessed with aliens. I don't know about other people in this room. Aliens. The Great Filter is kind of a dark concept. It's basically this idea that we don't see aliens because they all go extinct. I don't think that's actually why we don't see aliens. I think we don't see aliens because we have other filters that we're actually not even aware of. They're perceptual. How we see the world is an evolved property. It took billions of years for our planet to evolve entities that have eyes, and billions more to evolve entities that have telescopes and microscopes to see the furthest reaches of the universe and also to see the smallest scales. Our technology actually allows us to see the world in fundamentally new ways as part of life expanding its horizon of what it understands about the universe around it. Language is one of those technologies. Language is not just a means to communicate, it's a means to see the world. And sometimes we mistake the words we use for the meaning they carry. I actually don't think that words carry meaning at all. I can make a statement like, this statement is meaningless. It's literally meaningless. And so we have to think about how we interface with the words we use and the concepts that are actually underlying them in new ways. One of my favorite books actually brings words to being that don't exist in modern language. Language is a discretization of reality. It captures only in discrete, small packets a continuous set of possible meanings that we can create in the world. There are many things that exist we have no words for. There are many feelings we have that there are no words for. Nowling is one such word. So think about the youngest person you know and the oldest person you know. That is the totality of the size of our experiential human present. The present is actually thick. It's not an instantaneous moment. It's as deep as the memory that we have and that everything on this planet has that it's carrying in the current moment. I'm not my atoms. No one in this room is just their molecules. We're actually part of a billion-year-long lineage of information that has been structuring matter on this planet since the origin of life. So if we look at the Archean Earth, the pale orange dot, from which life emerged, we can trace a lineage all the way to the present moment. And the future is actually not anticipated yet. It hasn't happened. There wasn't enough information on this planet to specify the current moment at the origin of life. And in fact, part of the reason that we're having the dialogues we are having now is because we don't know what the future will look like. And this is one of the most critical things that we need to understand what life is, that actually it's not possible to know what the future will look like. So let's trace it back in time to what was happening billions of years in our past. We're at a current moment as humans. We can go back to origins of multicellularity, to eukaryotes, to the first cells, and all the way back to this gap in our knowledge, what we might call the hard problem of life. Most people here right now are probably more familiar with the hard problem of consciousness. Why is it that we have subjective experience of the world? Everyone in this room is having an experience of this moment in time. Consciousness, life, intelligence, these are what Karl Popper called framework problems. They are problems that we put in boxes. And as we've come to realize in the history of science, the way that we talk about things in the boxes we put around the world are not the world. Reality says something different than the languages that we use to describe it. And so we need to move beyond our current frameworks to discover new physics and new fundamental descriptions of the world that will carry us into in ways that we want to interact with our future. These frameworks need to be explanatory. They can't just be predictive. Predictions can only carry us so far. Ptolemy's model of epicycles was brilliant at predicting the planetary motions and the retrograde motion of Mars, but it couldn't explain anything. And we used it for over 1,000 years to make those predictions until we came up with a better model. That better model was what the generation of Galileo and Newton came up with, inventing the concept of gravity. We were able to unify celestial and terrestrial motion under a common descriptive paradigm. And it didn't just explain what we saw in our night sky, it explained things we couldn't even anticipate, like planets around other stars and the deepness and vastness of our universe. Gravity didn't go away. Our symbols to explain it got better. Our symbolic languages, what we encode when we do theoretical physics, is not actually what the world is about. The laws of physics are not intrinsic to the world. They are effective descriptions we have of the world. And the concept of space-time allows us to see the world in new ways. It allowed us to anticipate the existence of gravitational waves 100 years before we were actually able to detect them. Stanislaw Lem had this brilliant concept of existential technologies. And most of us will think about technologies as the devices that we're holding in our hands, our phones, and all of the kind of things in our environment. Theories are also technologies. Existential technologies are things that transform our cognition, our memory, and the philosophies that we use to interact with the world and actually change the course of human history. Darwin's theory of evolution, Popper's theory of knowledge, Einstein's theories of relativity, these are existential technologies. Not everyone understands all the cores of the symbols, but we all understand what they tell us about how reality works. They become cultural undercurrents that guide the direction that we have in the future. So what is life? This is not a framework question. This is not something that we understand what we're saying when we ask this question, because we do not have the technologies to see this phenomenon in the world. Our ancestors saw points of light in the night sky, and we learned that they were stars with worlds. Our ancestors could not anticipate the vastness of space that we understand it. Our ancestors thought Earth was young, and then we learned to read the rocks, and now we know our planet is 4 billion years old, and so is our moon. Our universe is over 13 billion years old. We do not recognize possibility as a physical thing. But our planet is very deep in possibility. In fact, Earth, I think, is the deepest object in the universe that we know of when you think about the possibility space it created. It started 4 billion years ago on the Archean Earth, this little orange dot, with vast chemical possibilities that could be created on that planet. And from those chemical possibilities emerged life. And billions of years later, emerged minds that could create vast possibility spaces. We think about math as the largest possibility space that we can even possibly imagine. It's so large compared to our minds, or at least the way that we talk about ourselves, that we think it's always been there, it's pre-existing, it's timeless. But in fact, it is a feature of our minds and the evolutionary potential of our planet. Living worlds are deep in causal possibility. And this is where we're going to do a little physics. I'm going to introduce a new existential technology where we're actually trying to take these concepts and measure them and develop new explanations for what life is. All objects that we interface with in the universe have a history. Existence is evidence of that history. But if you take the object apart, you can reveal all of the possibilities that are within it. And when we look back, if you look into that possibility space, it looks vast and like it was always there. So we think of a platonic world of all these forms that have always existed, and somehow we're just moving through them, rather than the fact that life is actually creating them. Life is creating the structure of the universe around us. This is why the present is thick, because all of those possibilities that our planet has accrued over 4 billion years exist in the current living objects. And it's incredibly creative. Evolution makes new structure. And every once in a while, a new possibility emerges that's entirely unanticipated. And it creates fundamentally new causation and new possibilities in our universe. And us, as observers of the present, looking back at the structure of the universe that created us, see these possibilities in our environment. We see the possibilities in the objects that we experience, the other living things around us. This is what assembly theory is trying to formalize, this idea of deep possibility being real physics and being descriptive of life. And we do this by defining something called an assembly space, which is the possibility space of all the causal histories that could create objects. And we're just one of those histories. There are only two things. I know most of you are not theoretical physicists. There's only two things you need to know. It's really easy. One of them is assembly index, which is the minimum construction path the universe has to take to make an object. The other one's copy number. How many of that object do we observe in the world? The parts of objects are causally shallow. The objects of our environment, the living things we see around us, are causally deep. Seeing many repeated structures that require a deep time evolutionary history to create them, many high assembly index objects in abundance, is evidence of lineage. It's evidence that the universe has built a memory to make that object. So we are finally ready to talk about what is life and what is alive. Life is objects that are causally deep. Being alive is the thickness of now. We're all alive in the present moment. We can look at an example, a Lego rose and a biological rose. A Lego rose, as a technological artifact, is a deep object. It has an assembly space associated with it, and there's a minimum causal depth. A biological rose is also a causally deep object. But unlike the Lego rose, the biological rose is a palimpsest of its own creation. It records the entire history of our planet in a single rose you can give to a friend. Each leaf is composed of cells. The cells can be causally decomposed into their parts and molecules, and the parts of the cells can be done further. And even molecules can be evidence of lineage. Imagine if we had gone to space without understanding gravity. The interactions we are having now are shocking. and they're teaching us to see the world in new ways. We are building or attempting to build minds, and we are deploying AI at scale without fundamentally knowing and understanding and being able to explain what it is that we're doing. And we're assuming that we see the world for what it is. Now, I can look at these two roses, and I can recognize both are life. One is alive. The color of these roses is not a feature of these roses. It's a feature of our minds. It's about the quality of our experience. So if I could see the world for what it really was, how would I recognize these objects without the perception I have of the languages I've been taught, the culture of my heritage? How can I see the world for what it really is? A bee would not make the mistake of thinking the Lego was a rose. So what assembly theory is telling us, or what we're trying to uncover with these new ideas, is that causation is a physical property. Time is material. Living objects have causal depth. Just like the tip of an iceberg, you only see the tip. When you look at another living entity in your environment, you see a short lifespan, you see a small spatial scale. What we do not see, and our biological lineage has not evolved us to see, but our technological lineage might allow us to see, is that every single living object, every single one of you in this room, is huge in terms of the possibilities that you contain. We are literally multitudes and some of the deepest objects the universe has ever created. Life is causally deep. And we're measuring this in the lab right now. Language is a technology. It doesn't tell us what the world is. And in fact, most of the time when I talk to other people, I don't understand what they're saying. I'm sure most of you have that experience. Meaning is created from our direct interaction with the world. And explanations are deeper than the symbols and the linguistic representations we use to describe them to each other. They are cultural knowledge and technology we carry from generation to generation that allows us to understand the reality that we're living in a deeper and deeper way as we ourselves become deeper and deeper in time. So when we think about contrasting biological lineages with the artificial lineages we're creating, we need to recognize that we ourselves do not see the world the right way. We do not know how to see ourselves through the lens that we're asking ourselves to see our technologies. We are some of the biggest possibility spaces in the universe, and we are very small in time and space. And even to simulate ourselves on our computers requires vast resources that pale in comparison to the size of an individual human mind. I think a data center is a lot bigger than I am. So returning to the question about the nature of life and technology, technology is not replacing us. It's part of our lineage. Technology is about as human as any creation could get in the universe of possibilities. It took us 4 billion years to get here, to make the creations that we're now making. It is life, but it's not alive. Aliveness is about the thickness of the present. And the present moment took 4 billion years to create. It's actually embodied in every single person in this room. I am not my atoms. You are not your molecules. We are part of a 4 billion year lineage that has been evolving structure on our planet. And the tips of those lineages are what's alive now. Being alive is incredibly special. Or as my colleague Lee Cronin says, who's actually the originator of assembly theory, life is how the universe develops a memory. I am certainly grateful to be alive with all of you right now. Thank you.